You shifted the cosmos, not because of another person's prayer, not someone with higher credentials, greater spirituality, or a better organized life than yours. Just you. The universe threw out its original script earlier today, the exact schedule planned for your future. All because of one simple choice you made before having your morning coffee, before being completely awake, and before having a chance to perform, fake it, or gather yourself together. You didn't even realize it was a major moment, but it registered on a level far beyond what physical eyes can perceive. A higher power looked at the dark blueprint laid out for your life and declared to discard it because a much better path is being constructed right now. That is the exact reason this video found you, because the forces trying to wreck your peace already realize what was just approved on your behalf, and they are working overtime right now, attempting to talk you out of believing it. So stick with me for the next few minutes as I guide you through what just shifted, what actually moved. I will break down why it changed because of your actions rather than perfect timing, and what steps you must take today so nothing can steal it back. You didn't stumble onto this by accident. You didn't just swipe past 100 other clips and learn this here by chance. Something pulled you here. Describe it however you want. A subtle push, a strong magnet, or an instinct you can't explain. But you aren't here by coincidence. You are listening right now because you are meant to hear this. And I really need you to stay until the very end, because the final moments of this video hold the key that seals what moved for you. If you walk away early, you only get half the message, and having only half the truth is the precise thing that has kept you stuck. Let me address your last few days, because I already understand how heavy they felt. Not noisy, not dramatic, just noticeably off, dense in a way you couldn't put your finger on, almost like the air itself shifted weight, without anyone giving you a reason why. You've been starting your mornings carrying an unnamed weight, an anxious tightness in your chest, a nervous energy in your hands, and a distinct feeling that you're standing on the brink of something big without seeing what lies ahead. Yet right in the middle of all that heaviness, you made a tiny choice. Maybe you held your tongue when every single part of you wanted to lash out. Maybe you kept moving forward, even though staying in bed felt like the only honest option. Maybe you offered kindness to someone who didn't earn it, not because you felt like doing it, but because a quiet, stubborn piece of your soul decided to do it anyway. You convinced yourself it didn't matter. You told yourself you were just going through the motions. You had no clue that the instant you took that action, it was recorded somewhere far more permanent than your current memory. Right now, you feel suspended in midair. It's like standing with one foot planted in the exhausting life you've been dragging yourself through, and the other foot stepping into something you can't fully see yet, but can feel pressing in at the edges. And inside that middle space, an internal voice has been working overtime against you. It tells you that your small action this morning was worthless. It tells you that minor choices never move the needle. It gathers up every delayed answer, every unanswered plea, and every instance where you did the right thing, only for nothing to change, using all of it as evidence to prove that none of your goodness actually counts, and that you're destined to keep doing the right thing into an empty void forever. That inner voice is deceiving you. It isn't just slightly wrong. It is actively and intentionally lying. because the universe doesn't measure what you did this morning by its outward size. It evaluates it by what it cost you emotionally to pull off. The awkwardness you sat with, the toxic impulse you resisted, the bitterness you chose not to feed, none of that is minor. That is the exact kind of victory that gets remembered. That's the kind of truth that serves as evidence for your future, not against it. Here is the perspective that transforms how you view these past few days. This energetic adjustment you're sensing isn't occurring because your season randomly arrived on an invisible cosmic clock. It is happening specifically because of what you chose to do. There is a massive distinction there, and that distinction is the entire point of this message. You didn't earn this breakthrough simply by waiting long enough. You triggered it by choosing honesty in a moment you didn't have to be. That heavy pressure you've been carrying isn't the weight of being forgotten. It's the pressure that builds right before a monumental shift occurs. It's the eerie quiet in a room seconds before the walls move. You aren't trapped in delay. You are standing in the final moments before something already decided becomes visible to your eyes. I want you to pause and digest this for a second, because most folks rush right past it and miss its true weight. When something this huge gets rerouted around a single human being, it never happens casually. It isn't a minor edit or a small note in the margins. It signifies that you said, did, or became something that sent a signal upward so powerful it demanded a response. And whether you fully grasp the magnitude of your choice this morning or not, it radiated a frequency that could not be ignored, not because you disrupted anything, but because you were finally seen taking a genuine, authentic step. Think about what you have really been carrying. You've been hoping, praying, and pushing through one exhausting day after another, while somewhere deep inside, a persistent doubt keeps asking if any of your effort is actually reaching anywhere. You wonder if your self-control, your grit, and those quiet tears in the car before walking back inside to keep surviving are being noticed by anything at all. And the answer that came back this morning wasn't a weak, subtle whisper. It was a complete rewrite, not just a tweak to the life you were living, but a full scrap and restart. The previous draft of your life got wiped off the table completely, and a fresh story is already being written in its place. Now this is where I need you to lean in, because this is the exact part most people skip over too quickly. Most people hear that something new is being written and feel an instant wave of hope. And that hope is totally justified. But if you stop there, you miss the deeper guidance hidden beneath the encouragement. This major shift isn't happening just to make you feel good, even though you completely deserve to feel good. It's happening because you are being moved onto an entirely different terrain, one that the old version of your life could never sustain. And that means something you've been clinging to, a rigid plan, a timeline, or an ideal picture of how this was supposed to play out, had to be released before anything new could actually land in your hands. That is often the hardest part to swallow, because what got cancelled this morning wasn't just an external plan. In many ways, it was an old version of you. A version that got a bit too comfortable sitting in the waiting room and mistook the waiting period for the actual destination. A version that started viewing the delay as safe and accepted that safety as good enough. And something quiet, without asking your permission, looked at that version of you this morning and declared, "Not yet." And beyond that, not here, never here. You were never meant to settle permanently in the place of preparation. You were always destined to actually arrive. A clear pattern shows up repeatedly in every single story of a person getting completely redirected. It's worth recognizing because it is happening to you right now. It never happens to the person who is merely willing. It happens to the person who is truly ready. And being willing versus being ready are two completely different mindsets. Willingness says, "I will move, but only if every condition lines up perfectly. Only if I can see the entire road beforehand. Only if someone guarantees the outcome before I take step one." Readiness speaks an entirely different truth. I have already let go of needing a guarantee. I am all in, whatever it takes. Something inside you let go this morning, even if you didn't consciously notice it happening. Perhaps it was in that blurry, half-awake space before your full consciousness kicked in, where your guard is down and your instincts are far more honest than your waking mind allows. Something released its grip in that moment, and it was noticed. I have to tell you the part that's harder to hear, because skipping it would be doing you a disservice. This shift isn't only about what's being added to your life. The fresh opportunities, the openings, and the good things heading your way. It is just as much about what is being stripped away, including things you are still desperately white-knuckling and holding on to with everything you've got. Some of what just got cancelled, you've actually been begging to keep. There have been relationships that felt like destiny, but were really just detours disguised to look permanent. There have been opportunities that looked like open doors, but were actually tests to see if you could spot the difference between gold and glitter. There have been versions of success you've been chasing that, had you caught them, would have pulled you further from your true purpose, rather than closer. That is the strange, uncomfortable reality of this kind of shift. It rarely feels like a gift in the moment it occurs. It often feels like a loss. Stay with me here, because this exact insight has the power to break a cycle you've been repeating longer than you realize. Think about anyone who ever held a dream that felt completely undeniable and divine, only to watch almost every event that followed look like the exact opposite of that dream coming true. The people who loved them most turned their backs. Doors slammed shut instead of opening. They were stripped of the external things that defined them, their status, comfort, and the story they used to tell about who they were. They ended up in situations that looked to the outside world like absolute failure. Yet at every single one of those rock-bottom moments, nothing was actually missing. Something was actively being built, brick by invisible brick, even while everything appeared to be crumbling. That hard season wasn't a punishment. It was construction taking place in the dark, where it's uncomfortable to stand but impossible to rush, and the person enduring it couldn't see the blueprint. They simply had to keep trusting without visible proof, hold their spirit together without a timeline, and allow themselves to be reshaped repeatedly without letting the trial turn them bitter. I need to speak directly to whoever is watching this and feeling that exact pain right now. You have been living in your own version of that pit. Maybe not a dramatic, visible collapse, but a quiet one. A place where the immense capability inside you has been obvious to everyone around, yet remains frustratingly untapped. A place where you feel your purpose vividly, but it hasn't found its outlet yet. A place where the dream alive inside you has been buried under layers of disappointment and delayed hope. And you've been asking endlessly, why hasn't my breakthrough come yet? But that isn't the question that matters most right now. The real question, the one that opens the next door for you, is this. Are you actually ready to receive what's coming in the specific form it's going to arrive in, rather than the shape you've been imagining for years? Because here is what almost everyone misses. What you have been asking for and what is actually being prepared for you are rarely the same shape, size, or timeline. And the gap between what you pictured and what is real is precisely where most people give up. You've been searching for a huge, dramatic door when what's already opened is a quiet window you haven't noticed yet. You've been praying for the old situation to return, while something entirely new, something you've never even imagined, has been under construction the whole time. Once you actually let that truth sink past the surface, something inside you begins to loosen. But there is one more layer underneath even that. And if you don't name it, it will keep operating quietly under every good thing coming your way. It is the habit of labeling your fear as wisdom. It is dressing up your fear of taking risks as patience. It is mistaking your retreat from real life as peace. So many people who are genuinely capable of extraordinary things have built entire belief systems around their own hesitation. They've turned their delay into a doctrine. They talk about surrender while quietly trying to micromanage every detail within reach, holding tightly to the illusion of safety. And the force guiding this process has been patient with that. Not because it's slow, but because it will never force you into a freedom you haven't actually chosen for yourself. This morning, for a moment, however brief or unnoticed, you stopped trying to control the outcome, and that single moment was enough. Now here is the truth I need you to truly sit with, because it holds the power to break a cycle that has likely been running longer than you've been aware of it. The main thing standing between you and everything that just shifted in your favor isn't an external force working against you. Opposition is real, resistance is real, but none of that is your primary obstacle right now. Your biggest obstacle, to say it gently, is the quiet part of you that still doesn't fully believe you're allowed to have this. It's the part of you that has been hurt so many times that you built a fortress around your own hope. Not to keep good things out, but to protect yourself from the agony of opening up completely and getting let down again. You've been believing cautiously, like someone walking carefully across thin ice, holding on to the railing with one hand just in case. And what you're being asked to do right now is to let go of that railing. Not to grab control, but to open your hand, even if it's shaking. Here is the truth that reframes everything you've heard so far. What shifted this morning didn't happen because you finally performed well enough. It didn't happen because your discipline hit a benchmark, or your routine looked spiritual enough from the outside. It happened because you got honest, not the polished version of honest, the raw kind. The moment you stopped pretending you were fine when you weren't. The moment you allowed the actual unfiltered state of your heart to be seen instead of the composed mask you usually wear. That was the signal. Not perfect phrasing, not practiced calm, but the plain, unguarded truth underneath it all. The part of you that finally admitted softly, I don't have this figured out, and I need something greater than myself to carry what I can't. That raw honesty is what moved things, and that changes everything, because it means you don't have to be completely healed before you can be used for something meaningful. You don't have to reach total certainty before you are established in what's coming. Whatever is at work right now is building an internal strength through this exact moment of truth, sturdy enough to hold the weight of everything about to be handed to you. So let's discuss what this actually looks like moving forward, because understanding what happened is only half the battle. The other half is what you do with it. What got cancelled this morning was the old script, the one where you shrink so nobody around you feels uncomfortable with your potential, the one where you keep compromising with fear because fear has been a familiar, predictable companion for so long. That script is finished, not because you willed it away with positive thinking, but because something greater than your willpower already tore it to pieces. What's replacing it isn't a promise that every single day gets easier from here. It is a fundamental shift in the actual foundation beneath your life. The thing that defines what becomes possible for you, far beyond what you feel in any given moment. I want you to pay attention to any discomfort you might be feeling right now. Yes, I can sense that hearing all of this might trigger that. If a part of you is fighting this, arguing with it, or trying to talk yourself out of believing it applies to you, that resistance isn't proof that this isn't real. It's usually the exact opposite. It's the old, exhausted version of you trying to defend its territory one last time before letting go. That version served a purpose once. It kept you whole through trials that genuinely could have broken you. It was never foolish and it was never weak. It was doing precisely what it was designed to do. But the conditions that made it necessary have changed. Even if nobody has told your nervous system yet, you are no longer in the situation that taught you to brace, shrink, and expect disappointment. You are somewhere new now, and it's time for the way you carry yourself to match that reality. Here's something worth sitting with. Honestly, most people don't miss their breakthrough because it fails to show up. They miss it because it arrives looking different than expected, and they are too busy scanning the horizon for the version they imagined to notice the one standing right in front of them. So over the next few days, stay observant. Watch for the door that opens quietly, rather than the one that makes a loud entrance. Pay attention to the person who shows up without drama instead of the movie-like rescue you've been picturing. Listen to the small nudge urging you toward the uncomfortable choice, because that nudge is very likely the actual shape of what was set in motion this morning. It rarely looks like a parade. It usually looks like an opportunity to be a bit more honest, a bit more visible, and a bit less controlled than you're used to being. And I want to be straight with you about something else, because it matters more than it sounds. You are allowed to want this. You're allowed to want a life where you aren't constantly waiting for things to go wrong, where you aren't calculating the smallest, safest version of yourself before entering a room. Wanting that isn't selfish and it isn't naive. It's actually the exact desire that's been waiting to be reactivated inside you all along. The exhaustion you felt, the numbness, the feeling of just going through the motions. Much of that came from spending years convincing yourself that wanting more wasn't safe. But wanting isn't dangerous. Numbing yourself to keep from wanting is what has been costing you. That's the real danger. And this morning, A part of you stopped numbing, even for a second. And that second is what was responded to. So here is what you need to do with everything you just heard, because knowledge without action is just another thing you knew and never applied. Right now, wherever you are, acknowledge out loud, or even softly to yourself, that you are done pretending the small choice you made this morning didn't matter. Because it did. It mattered enough to rewrite what was coming next. I want you to let go of the version of yourself that survived by playing small. Not because that version failed you, but because its mission is complete. I want you to stop mistaking hesitation for wisdom and start recognizing the difference between the two. I want you to release the rigid shape you've been demanding your breakthrough take and get genuinely curious about the form it is actually arriving in, because it's likely closer than you think, disguised as something ordinary. You aren't waiting for permission anymore. You already have it. It was never something you had to earn through more discipline, higher performance, or continuous proving. It was granted the moment you stopped faking it and let yourself be honestly, uncomfortably seen. You don't have to carry the story others wrote about your limits, or the labels given by people who never understood your full capability. You get to walk forward today without having every answer or every step mapped out, simply trusting that whatever set this in motion knows exactly where it's going. Even when you can't see the whole road yet, what you did this morning is already rippling through your life. Whether you feel it or not, it's already woven into what comes next. You are not invisible. You were never forgotten during the waiting period. Right now, you are exactly where you need to be for what is about to unfold. And from here on, this quiet act of honesty that changed everything doesn't have to be a one-time accident. It can be how you live. A little more visible, a little more truthful, and a little less willing to shrink just to make others comfortable. That isn't arrogance. That's finally rising to match the size of what's being built around you. So don't talk yourself out of this in the next hour by brushing it off as just another video. Let it actually settle in. Let it change how you carry yourself through the rest of today. Because things shifted not because everything about you looked perfect, but because for one honest moment you stopped pretending. And that is more than enough. That is exactly what it takes. Go live like that's true, because it already is.